From sea to shining sea, who is seen in this country of ours?
Whose voices are heard?
Whose families belong?
Whose lives matter?
The Black Freedom Collective, a project of community change, is a unified front of freedom fighters. We're aiming to repair the harm and design the liberation of all Black people.
I'm strong and I love the skin. I'm in every shape, every inch. No doubt there's power deep within. Yeah.
We are part of a powerful movement of Black-led organizing groups from across the country, demanding bold policy changes at the local, state, and national levels that will enable our people to have what they need to thrive.
It is a space for us in the most inclusive and expansive way as we can imagine it, to show up, to think together, to dream together, and just to exist together.
We see a future where in every corner of this country, Black communities are safe, healthy, and prosperous.
And where all people are free, no matter your ancestry or zip code.
Our people are people that have always moved in collective. And so the BFC provides that space for us to continue to do that, dreaming and identifying and restructuring and building.
To do this work, we need to take care of ourselves. This road to change is paved with transformative practices, not just hard-won policies.
And the Black Freedom Collective allows us to show up fully
with our joys and our traumas and display our mosaic culture unapologetically as we fight for recognition and restitution for the oppression of Black people.
We're reimagining safety and policing, housing and healthcare,
fair wages and equal access to opportunities, childcare and voting rights.
These changes are our liberation.
It's exhilarating to get up every morning and know that I'm fighting for my fellow brother and sister, that I'm living out the values that were instilled with me from my grandparents to love your neighbor. Because if I'm not living my life in a way that allows me to truly be free and liberated, then what am I doing? And that's why I'm part of this cohort.
I'ma be my best self.
Our joys and our sorrows,
scars and questions.
We carry them all into the hard and necessary conversations with each other.
And with our allies in the struggle.
Historically, Black-led organizations and institutions have lacked the resources they need to make the changes that we need in this country. And the Black Freedom Collective aims to address those gaps by really investing in the capacity of Black-led organizations, Black leaders, Black organizers, and the Black organizing ecosystem as a whole.
As we continue to learn and lead together,
we are training organizers.
We are building our capacity and wielding our power.
And we're inviting you to join a coalition of folks who want to make good trouble in the name of freedom.
We have got to use this moment, come together collectively in this revolution, and it is a revolution.
The other thing that organizers do, we are hope dealers. We're helping people believe things they don't see yet.
The Black Freedom Collective knows we are stronger together.
Together.
And together is how we will win liberation.
For ourselves and for the generations to come.
I'ma be my best self.
Thank you and welcome. My name is Jennifer Wells. I am a senior organizer with Community Change Action, and the Black Freedom Collective. And we're welcoming you to our Facebook Live series, Black Organizing on the Path to Power. Today we're focused on the 3 R's: repeal, repair, and reparations. A little bit about Community Change before we get fully kicked off. Community Change is a national social justice organization that is committed to building power with low-income communities, especially low-income communities of color. We have 50 plus years of operation with our focus on racial and economic justice. The Black Freedom Collective, or the BFC as we call it, is a growing network and a project of community change focused on building power and capacity of Black-led organizations across the country. We currently have 21 partners across 15 states. And if you're interested in learning more about community change in the BFC, we'll be dropping our information in the chat. I have 2 invitations for the folks that are watching. The first invitation is please use the chat. This is an engaging and powerful discussion. And first, we want to know who you are and where you are. I've already named, I'm Jennifer Wells. I'm currently in Huntington, West Virginia, but we'd love to know where you're watching from. And the second invitation is, again, this is going to be a powerful discussion with amazing panelists. And when you have questions or comments or appreciations, we want to see those in the chat as well. We have space available in our program, and hopefully we'll get to those questions. But because this is not about me, this is about us, I'm not going to delay this conversation any longer. I am going to bring in our Dynamo moderator and current BFC partner, Chelsea Higgs Wise with Marijuana Justice, Virginia. Welcome, Chelsea.
Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited to be here. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, BFC and Community Change. I'm so excited to come and talk about repeal, repair, reparations. So I am the moderator for this afternoon's conversation, and I just really want to have a moment about what the 3 R's really stand for and how here in Virginia, we came to really use that as our campaign moving forward to legalize it right, and why it's bigger to us than just legalizing marijuana, why our work in the Black Freedom Collective is so important to working with our people, to working to eliminate poverty, and working to really ensure that we are not repeating the same harms that has disenfranchised our communities and our people for so long. We are very focused on the criminal codes of marijuana enforcement, as well as the inclusion of the businesses. Marijuana justice came about in 2019, very specifically what was happening in Virginia, because we keep an eye on our place, space, and time. And that was when the nation was having a conversation about the 400th year, 1619. Well, that happened right here on the Virginia shores. And here in Virginia, we took that very seriously, as Virginia had commemorations all year long about being the first legislative body in this country, the oldest legislative body in this country. We did not have conversations about how the oldest legislative body in this country also instituted the act of slavery, oppression, capitalism, exploitation, and extraction from our communities. And if we have a legacy of that here in Virginia, we thought, how in the world can we use our power right now in 2019 with our voices to move forward? And as Virginia made a promise and a commitment of restitution and reconciliation, we said, okay, well, here is our call to action. And here in Virginia, unfortunately, in 2019, we had many scandals. As some folks may remember, our current governor had a yearbook picture that was a KKK picture, someone dressed in blackface, like in a minstrel show, and it was on his page. He denied that it was him, but it brought up a large conversation in Virginia about what type of leaders we are informing and how the information is reaching them. And so we have to be very direct for our needs and our history, because we do not know how informed our legislators always are. And we had a big reality of that here in Virginia in 2019. So we started Marijuana Justice because we saw the national campaign to legalize marijuana, but we also saw the national trend of continuing to enforce marijuana in a way that was feeding us still into the carceral system. Marijuana is not the gateway drug to harder drugs. It is the gateway to the carceral system for Black and Brown communities. And we wanted to create a new pathway to where if we are going to legalize this, we're going to do it in a way that repeals the real prohibition of marijuana. Like, why is this actually illegal? And we want to repair the communities with expungements in their criminal records. And we want to bring reparations. We love videos and have pieces for you to share. So I'd love if you join me in watching a short piece that here the Legalize It Right Coalition put together for this past General Assembly while we were pushing for legalizing it right. And a spoiler alert, we won one of our biggest battles. And when they told us they would not legalize it and they would not stop the enforcement of simple possession, we were able to force the General Assembly of Virginia to legalize it. And here we are approaching July 1, and Virginia is about to legalize marijuana. So let's take a moment and enjoy this video.
The way Virginia decriminalized simple possession of marijuana has left the door open for racial disparities to continue. It's time to legalize it right. Legalization of marijuana in Virginia has to be done with a racial equity lens. This means focusing on people that have been harmed by our approach to marijuana use and building a roadmap to legalization through the 3 R's: repeal, repair, and reparations. Repeal marijuana prohibition and remove all penalties now. Don't criminalize our youth or young adults, and no new crimes. Repair the harm done due to previous marijuana enforcement through full and automatic expungement and removal of marijuana-related convictions. And reparations for the Virginia drug war. We must divest from policing and carceral solutions and invest into Black communities and Black ownership in the industry.
I believe that in order to build our communities and create a brighter future for us all, we must legalize it right to prevent the harm from legalizing it wrong.
I feel that our Commonwealth of Virginia here was built on doing things wrong. And in order to legalize it right, we need to see minority faces running legitimate cannabis businesses.
I want to see Virginia legalize it right. It's an opportunity to undo the wrongs created by the war on drugs, particularly in my hometown of 757. This would be our clear chance at generational wealth, but you can't monetize what you once criminalized without fixing the problem.
Although those punished with harsh sentence such as myself will never get the time back from being over-sentenced because of the color of my skin, I feel like the restoration of rights and expungement could serve as a form of reparations if Virginia were to legalize it right.
Even after the General Assembly legislative session ends in January 2021, the fight for equitable legalization in Virginia will continue to live on. Marijuana Justice Virginia is a Black-led nonprofit that is focused on legalizing marijuana the right way in Virginia. We do this by educating legislators, building power and solidarity for a national movement by working with other Black organizers across the country to actualize social equity and marijuana legalization, listening and learning with local community members about how marijuana reform can transform communities if we divest from systems that criminalize us and invest in communities and capital for our ownership, and mobilizing people to pressure key decision makers in the fight for equitable legalization. You can support the movement to legalize it right in Virginia by signing our current petition, subscribing to our website, and following us at THC Justice Now, and donating to Marijuana Justice to sustain our efforts.
Wow. That video still gives me chills. A lot of the pictures and videos were from our community last summer in 2020 that really came together for this push. And as you heard in the video, our goal is to really organize with Black organizers across the country. And so I am honored to be part of the Black Freedom Collective with Community Change and these opportunities to be put in rooms of Black organizers all the time, every month, in the weeks, and different forms of platforms. And today, that's what we get to do, is have a very intimate conversation of what's happening across the country, particularly in 2 other states besides Virginia. So I would really love to welcome to the stage our 2 other panelists for the day, A'Esha Goins of Make It Work, Nevada. Woo, come on in. We're so excited to have her here from Nevada. And then our second panelist is going to be Michael Ford from Minnesota NRML. All right. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure what it is where you're at, but thank you for having me here.
That's a good start. Why don't you all just tell us exactly where you are in the world and what time is it?
Well, I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's 9:15 a.m. And this is the best time to have this conversation. I am bright. I am ready. Let's make this the morning. I'm excited.
And I'm in Minnesota, and the time is currently 11:15. So we're getting towards the afternoon time.
I love this. And it is 12:15 right here in the so-called capital of the Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia. So we're reporting from all across the nation right now. And we got to hear a little bit with my introduction in the video about what's going on in Virginia. For those folks that have not been keeping it up, that Virginia is the first state in the South to legalize possession. So that will happen July 1. And we'll hear a little bit more about that as we have this conversation with you all. But first, let's just hear from both of you all. And A'Esha, I'll ask you to go first. What is the state of marijuana or cannabis in Nevada right now? Tell us, is it legalized? What's going on with this conversation?
So Nevada is a legal state. We were one of the first 9 states to legalize in the nation. We have dispensaries, we have retail dispensaries, and then we also are decriminalized. So you can have possession of 1 ounce or less, and that will that's the legal standard. One of the other things that is happening here in Nevada is we have 2 sessions ago, we have a space where the employee, it's like an employee safety. You can't test an employee for cannabis in the pre-interview stage. You can only test them after a 30-day or after they've signed the drug and alcohol standards for that job. So that's just kind of where we are right now. But again, we have a diversity issue in the state of Nevada. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation right now. But that's where we are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And okay, so Nevada, you got it going. And tell me one more time, when did you all legalize?
We legalized, and so we were medical in 2014. We legalized in 2016.
2016.
So July 1st, we're coming up now on an anniversary. So July 1st, 2016 is when we had our first retail sale.
Wow. Okay. So 5 years coming up. Michael, up in Minnesota, what's going on with marijuana / cannabis?
So in Minnesota, it's still not legal. We have been fighting for a long time to legalize it. We did go medical in 2014. Unfortunately, we do have one of the worst medical programs in the nation. Fortunately, this year we did actually have the addition of flower added to our medical cannabis program. We did see some push forward. HF 600, we made history. It's the first time a legalization bill has ever passed through the House. It passed through 12 different Senate committees to actually start pushing for legalization here, but we do have a hurdle in the Senate. In addition to that, we are decriminalized for up to 54 grams, but it's not necessarily decriminalized because we still are working on non-flower concentrates. Currently, if you're arrested or ticketed for vapes or non-flower, any type form of concentrates, those are felonies in Minnesota. So we have been pushing to kind of really push the decriminalization a little further in our state. And that's pretty much what we're working on here currently.
Yeah, thank you for that. So our conversation today in Virginia, we're approaching it on July 1. We've got Nevada, who's been in it now for 5 years, and Minnesota that's still working on the fight. So 3 very different dynamics. And please continue as you are listening to drop your questions in the chat as they come up. We will make space for those. A'Esha, I would love to hear a little bit about you all's journey to legalization. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved, if you don't mind. I think it's important for us to hear our personal journey and, a little bit about what happened along the way.
So to be transparent, I was involved in the decriminalization conversation when that came up. I wasn't involved in the medical conversation in Nevada. So there are some great fighters in Nevada that got us to medical. And then once we were pushing what we called Yes on 2, that was a decriminalization. That's when I got completely involved. And I got into the industry because at the time, because I'm a coach by trade, And my client at that time just decided he's a community activist. He was also the first Black city council member. And he just came in the office one day and was like, we're getting into marijuana. And I was in ministry at that time, you know, and so I was really struggling with the whole idea of my ideology, right? But I trusted that if this was landing in my lap, that this was the next thing to do. And so we went, you know, we were the first Black-owned business in Nevada. He's still one of the only Black-owned dispensaries in Nevada. We were first open in Nevada for medical. And then so as question 2 came up, yes, on 2, legalize marijuana like alcohol. I was like, okay, here's a situation where this has to be decriminalized, because we were having that conversation over and over and over again about my people were being arrested. And that didn't sit well with me. I was coming into the store every day and I'm selling cannabis to patients who were predominantly white, and yet my people were still being criminalized. And so that's how I got into the legalization and the decriminalization component of it. And what happened was, when they decided to legalize it, those same licensees, what they did in Nevada that was just really weird is the way the bill was written, those licensees who were medical were the only licensees who were able to go retail. So the industry has been locked by the same licensees since the beginning, or what we say, since the onset of cannabis in Nevada. Because it feels like cannibalism to me. But
I was gonna say the slick have been.
I feel like they're eating our souls, but saying that to say before, so we went legal, they decriminalized, but yet my people were still in prison, right? We only last session put a bill together that would expunge persons and seal records for those people who were criminalized in Nevada. And then, even then, if you had, because we all know our people, what they make us do is they ask us to, what do they call it? You have to, yes. So, you know, when we get in situations, they want us to, anyway. So what happens is, if you're in a space where you pled a different charge, your cannabis charge isn't the charge that you can have expunged or you can have sealed. So now we have a situation where we have a bunch of people who pled out of cannabis charges and are still incarcerated because of cannabis. So, you know, it's an ongoing work. And you know, when we talk about legalize it right, we're still changing. Thank God policy is a living, breathing document, right? So we're still changing the policy, but every time we go to session, we're figuring out something else that we need to change. Like this session, I realized all of our, you know, they were still criminalizing our youth. So this session, I had to, yes, this is just crazy. So this session, we put a bill together that made it so that youth 21 and under also would only get fined for an ounce or unders. You know, so what will happen is they will only get a slap on the hand, do some community service for first, second, and third offenses. So their whole life won't be derailed for cannabis. But right now, because I made the mistake of, because this is what happens, of not making that retro, now I have to go back to session to get the kids who are already in expunged and sealed. So it's, you know, it's ongoing, and that's how I got into work, and that's where the work is. But yeah, it's ongoing.
Yeah, you really are. I saw a comment that says you are teaching, and that is true. Because number one, you got in because you saw the harm that was being done, and number two, you're highlighting a point of capacity. Because as you were fighting, I'm sure that there were things that you wish you could have done and highlighted, but we only have but so much. And number three, that the fight goes on. Even after legalization, you are just preaching to us about how we have to continue to look at this enforcement model of what's going on, and the recycling and recreation of enforcement that just pops up in these bills. Yeah. Michael, I would love to hear from you a little bit about, I'm going to bring up the social equity question. I'm going to hit this back with A'Esha that has had some real pieces to this, but what are some of your big barriers that you've had in your story, and how did you also come to this work? So I would love to hear from you and your journey into this work, and some of the barriers.
So I came into this work originally because I was charged with a cannabis crime. Fortunately, I was able to fight the charge and actually beat the charge, so I didn't actually get a conviction. And then I had a cancer scare at one point in time, and I was using cannabis to heal myself. At that point, I felt like I needed to get a little deeper involved in the legalization movement. And at the time, there was kind of scattered groups working on legalization, but not really taking it seriously. So I ended up falling into a couple leadership positions, and I've been doing the best that I can to kind of push the legalization efforts here in Minnesota. One of those positions was the chairman for a political party that we created, our own political party. Unfortunately, in Minnesota, it's not like Colorado or California where they have initiative. We actually have to petition to get it to the House. We can't petition to pass it in Minnesota. It actually has to pass through the House and the Senate to get legalization, and then to the governor in Minnesota. Whereas in California or Colorado, they can actually petition to put a ballot initiative on. So with that being said, we wanted to find a way to bring visibility to the legalization efforts. So we created our own political party, which is the Legal Marijuana Now political party. And then we ran candidates each year trying to show the legislators that legalization is an important issue that people are willing to vote on. In 2018, I actually ran for office myself because we were in jeopardy of losing our minor political party status if we didn't get a certain percentage of votes. So in 2018, I became the first Black candidate to actually get on the ballot with the words Legal Marijuana Now in Minnesota. My first time running for office, I actually got 133,000 votes. So 5.3% of the vote. And we actually became a major political party in the state of Minnesota. That was huge. We started seeing tremendous change in the legislature, with the legislators introducing multiple bills the following year. And then the push has just continued to keep going to see legalization happen in Minnesota. So it's definitely been a long, ongoing process. With the new changes that we have seen, we are at a pivotal point in Minnesota where we do have to actually legalize it right. And I'm glad to be on this panel to hear what you guys are doing in the states that you're in and what you wish you could have done. So as we go forward, we can make sure we make those changes in the beginning, so we don't have to, like A'Esha said, go back later and trying to fix some things. I know there are some issues that we have with expungement. I know across the nation, a lot of people are using the word expungement, but expungement basically just covers up the conviction. It doesn't actually make it go away. So we've been hoping to find ways to use other things besides expungement, like vacate and dismiss, where the charge would no longer exist. Right now with expungement, it's like basically putting a blanket over the issue, but it still shows up and you still don't have your civil rights back. In addition to that, I know A'Esha also touched on some of the stuff about convictions and getting people out of jail. And that's going to be a hard process here in Minnesota. I'm hoping that we can, legalize it right and take some feedback and advice from the things that you guys are doing in other states. So I hope that touches on what you were looking for.
Yeah, number one, Michael, congratulations with all the moving and shaking and pushing the narrative and collective people power that you were able to do up in Minnesota. That's real big. So congrats to that. And I love that you all are showing such a variety of coming to this work. And Michael, you brought up a really good point that for folks across the country that are interested in marijuana and cannabis organizing is, number one, finding out if your state is a referendum state. Mm-hmm. That's one of the first things you need to know if you're looking to legalize it, of whether you can put it on the ballot or what you have to do, like Minnesota did and like Virginia has to do. We are not a referendum state, and we had to create a legislative bill to push in the House and push it through legislation. And so that's also why Illinois' legalization was so historic, because it was the first state to push legalization through the legislature. And I think that's important for people to realize, because that just means that for so long, it took the people's voice at the ballot to legalize it because our legislators would not. Okay. So that's the first step. And when if you're looking to organize in your state, is your state a referendum? So do you organize at the ballot, or do you organize around General Assembly in your bills legislative process? And the other thing, Michael, that you really said to point out is the repair model, the repeal, repair, reparations of the sealed records expungements here in Virginia as well. It might help a little bit with the collateral consequences of housing, employment. Those folks may or may not be able to see past records, but the police, the prosecutors, and the judges can still see past marijuana records. And if we know that it is the institution of the carceral system that has continued to disenfranchise us, why are we still allowing this institution to have access to these records when we know that they're going to disproportionately sentence us later on with it? And again, make these carve-outs and plea deals, as A'Esha mentioned before, that are just going to create loopholes that are harder for our liberation. And that's a big reason, too, why we have our reparations model on here, because as we look at the resentencing and the repair models, we know the uphill battle that it will be. So what we also need, because Black people don't do enough in our organizing, we also need to be pushing for where that tax revenue goes in the beginning, y'all.
Yes, absolutely.
In the beginning. So in Virginia, that's why we are here. And I'm so excited to have conversations, because Virginia tried to not do anything until 2024. They were like, we're going to have this big performance and put it off for 3 years. And then we, the people, came in and said, no, you won't. This is racist to keep doing this. That's kind of what we said in all the press. And they pushed it, but they left out a lot of things. So what they did is they did a reenactment clause, which means in 2022, we basically go back and re-argue the entire legislation. All they did was repeal the prohibition of simple possession. Okay, repeal the prohibition. So simple possession is the only thing that's legal. So here in Virginia, we have an opportunity to go back and fight for these, where the dollars go for social equity and things like that. And with that conversation, when people talk about the bills, they say a lot about social equity and social equity this and making sure we got social equity. A'Esha, I already see your head moving.
That social equity word is like a bad word for me. I was like, stop saying social equity, because what we need to be, I'm not going to say what we need to say. What I will say is, when we talk about social equity, if we're not conscious of how it's being defined and how it shows up for us, then what happens is they just write us off. It's just another way for them to either carve out a section and say that that's all you're going to get, or to just policy you out of it completely. Because they define that. For example, let me just say it just like this. So for example, they'll say you have to live in an over-policed area, right? Okay. If you first, who is saying over-police? Like, and if you already know we being over-policed, why the hell you over-policing us? That's the dumbest shit ever. Like, if you know that this is happening, why are you doing it? And then why are you giving me the numbers to it? I don't understand that. But what they'll say is you have to live in over-policed areas. So now you're hunting in a space of those persons who consistently are having obstacles with finances, right? Or the barrier to entry is the money. And they'll say, here's how you do business. In Nevada, you have to have $250,000 liquid in order to get into the industry. I'm not saying that we can't come up with $250,000 liquid. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, if you want to let me do business and you're saying that this business is for me, make it for me, and then provide finances for that. But then make the damn opportunity equitable. Like, why are you saying it's going to be social equity and then you're not making the opportunity equitable? And I'm not a person who by any means is anti-competitive. However, create a scenario that just makes sense. Like, damn, don't create a scenario that you want me to lose and then you say, oh, here we gave it to the Black folks and they just couldn't do it. No. So create the bridge.
You're bringing up a good point that we always talk about, is like, don't just give me the key. I need the whole house. So in Virginia, which again, I wanted to tell everybody that this is a reenactment clause, we were really successful at creating the CERF, CERF, the Cannabis Equity Reinvestment Fund. So this fund is actually created, and I saw a question about how to hold big pharma accountable. I'm going to answer that question a little bit in this social equity clause to talk about A'Esha's point with capital and these businesses. This fund is going to fund two things. Number one, it's going to fund the social equity operators who have capital day one. So big pharma, if you want to be in the recreational business, you actually have to pay a $1 million fee, and that money goes straight to the social equity operator so that they can have capital on day one to meet this need of what A'Esha is saying. Now, again, you have to make the process equitable, and that's what we're still fighting here in Virginia, right? But we did create a fund. And so that's a piece of information, a little tool I want to give folks to create a space to where the money will go. And here in Virginia, we didn't get enough money. They only given us 30%, which is not enough. But it is a place to where we can start demanding of, if you're a big company, you need to pay into this fund so that we can start on day one, equity day one. And number two, the other big question about limiting pharma is we were able to ban vertical integration here in Virginia, which means the licenses, instead of one multi-state operator coming and buying all the licenses from seed to sale, y'all, and it just being one big monopoly, we were able to say, oh, no, you don't, not in Virginia. We need to stay at horizontal and ban that unless you're a medical operator and you're paying $1 million.
That's brilliant. Oh my goodness, because what that will do is create an actual competitive marketplace and allow those mom and pop shops to compete at a standard. That was so smart. Good grief, Chelsea.
No, it's not. We followed this from Illinois. Go ahead, Mike. I don't want to cut you off. We learned because Illinois tried to do it and they failed with one line, almost basically one line in that policy screwed their whole social equity, and we were able to remove it from ours. But Michael, go ahead. You were going to say something?
And I just want to add that we do have to be intentional when we're talking about social equity. Like you said, there needs to be a clear definition of what social equity looks like. So, and here in Minnesota, HF 600, when they define social equity, according to the bill, social equity applicants are veterans who lost their honorable discharge status because of cannabis-related offense and are residents of a census tract with high poverty rates or low-medium family income. That doesn't mention race at all. It doesn't mention Black. It also will capture. They believe it will capture a lot of people of color. Since we've been impacted and we're primarily in those areas. But you can't say what it will or what it won't do unless you're intentional about what social equity looks like.
Right. And I'm going to be, we could probably have a whole conversation on social equity, but I think it's important for people to know that many social equity clauses, right? This is not a social equity bill. A big thing we tell folks is your whole bill needs to be equitable, not just your social equity clause. They like to put us in this one little section. Yes. But many social equity programs, you all, are under litigation, which means they are halted, they are stopped, unable to continue to go on because people are saying it's racist or they're putting these things forward. So I want to move us a little bit because we're having a big conversation. I also want to take some questions too. But as we fight for defining social equity, right? How are we also talking about reparations with and looking for it to pay people? Because as I'm looking to fight, I realize, wow, they're really doing their best to keep us out of the industry. And many people are just not going to get wealthy off this industry, y'all. They're only going to be but so many licenses. So how else are we using the tax revenue directly to our people? And also not just to other institutions that have already defunded us and nonprofits that don't care about us. How do these tax revenues go directly back to people? So what are the conversations y'all are hearing right now?
So one of the things that in Nevada, there is no money. So let me just be straight up frank. And when I'm having these reinvestment conversations, the pushback is, where would the money go, right? Where would the money go? So Oakland is a great example of how you should fund the programming, right? Because what they have done is, which I am trying to push now here in our state, especially in Clark County, is we need money for workforce development. We need money for business prep. We need money for licensing. We need money for real estate. You know, we need money to fund all of the components for business. And even I'm thinking we need to be able to provide grants for those businesses opening to extend them through their first year of business. And then we need money to fund those orgs, for example, Community Change, Make It Work Nevada, CEIC. There needs to be mass liberation. There needs to be money going to those orgs that are fighting to repeal and repair what has happened because of the war on drugs. And so when we're talking about where all the funding should go, this is the places. I'm not saying that money shouldn't go to the schools. We all know that money should go to the schools, but there also needs to be a reinvestment into those communities that have been debilitated because of the war on drugs. And so that's what I believe that we should be looking at as we're putting formulas together. And then also now we have a housing crisis. There needs to be money that's going towards affordable housing. And because the cannabis money is the money. This is what I have to tell people. When we're looking at this cannabis money, the money is not allocated. It's all new revenue. There's nowhere, they haven't even thought of where it all could go. It's just new money. So when we're considering new money, let's really consider it all the way out. Where are the places that we're defaulting? This is where the money should go. Fuck the police. Like I believe in peacemakers and all of that, and I really appreciate that. But there's already money to fund that. What we need is money to go towards community centers and go towards childcare and go towards repairing our childcare system. This is where the money should go. The places where we're debilitated in our communities, that's where the money should go. Sorry, I cussed.
No, you were giving me all the energy. I just was like, we are really home at the Black Freedom Collective. And it's real because these carceral systems have been the ones to defund our own communities. And I really wanted to lift and bring up something that is important for cannabis and marijuana organizers across the country that are learning how to do this. It is not unprecedented. This is a fight to say that these tax revenues should not go to anything that is already funded at the general fund level. This is like she said, this is new money. We need to look at programs that are not already funded. We don't need to be supplementing anything. And that needs to be a standard because right here, they're trying to give a whole bunch of money to pre-K. And what I've seen and we've seen for so many times that they are willing to put money into our children's, but not into our Black families. And so what we are also continuing to look at is, I'm going to be really honest, as we're looking at and investing in these places, we're looking to see how we can put direct payments into people that have been arrested with misdemeanors, felonies, and incarcerated, because you're right, everything needs to be funded. And you know what? How to reach that? Paying people directly that are intertwined in all of those systems. Because as a social worker, I got a whole degree in social work I did for 10 years before this. I used to just bounce around to every institution begging for money for one person. You know what's going to save us a lot of time? Giving that one person money. And so when we talk about reparations for the drug war, a lot of folks, talk about enslavement and like, well, we don't know who or where to go. And it's an argument there. I want to be very clear when we talk about drug war reparations, that particularly in cannabis, we know who was harmed. They kept a list. They still have the list. They're still surveilling us, and it's called our criminal record. So we should use this list against them to pay us very clearly.
You know what they say is that we're being radical. They'll say, oh, the idea of, reinvestment is a radical idea, but so was legalizing cannabis. So if you're talking about being radical, let's talk it all the way through. You legalized weed. You didn't want us to have it. We go all the way back for that. No.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're talking about being radical. So I want to shift to the national conversation that's happening right now, is that we're having a radical reinvestment from the federal government into the states with this Rescue Act money, right? Radical is happening. I don't know if people paid attention, but radical is happening. So I want to also just bring this on as we have our individual fights, right? There's a national investment that's happening, and what conversations are maybe not happening in this reinvestment that we really have not seen since Reconstruction. Michael, this is open for anyone.
because I've taken up a lot of space. So, Michael.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say on this one, Michael?
No, on the federal level, I would just refer to the MORE Act is what we've been working on with Normal, trying to repeal some of the things that are affecting us. I'm sorry, I'm pulling up multiple documents here.
You're good. You're good. Are there any other reparations things too before we shifted to the conversation that, I mean, we're at open space and just flowing, Michael. So is there anything else you wanted to just add in here?
No, I'm kind of just loving what you guys are talking about and being involved in the conversation. And even though I've been doing the work for a long time, I'm still a new organizer, still trying to kind of learn the ropes. I think reparations is a huge issue that we actually need to address, and we're not hearing much of those conversations here in Minnesota. You do hear reparations as far as for Black people and descendants of slaves, but you're not really hearing necessarily about reparations around people that have been impacted or incarcerated for cannabis or marijuana offenses. And I think it's going to be important for us to start addressing that here in Minnesota.
Yeah. So I want to drop in a link that we can get in. It's from the GRIO, and it's put out by folks at the DPA and Movement for Black Lives, Law for Black Lives, talking about 50 calls of reparations for the war on drugs. Like Michael was saying, I'm still very new to this as well, and bringing these conversations to the national forefront can be a little intimidating. But it's important for us to see that other people are talking about this, that we can have these conversations at home as well. If you would have asked me this conversation a year ago, I would not have been saying the same thing. So I also just want to lift up folks over at Drug Policy Alliance that have poured into me and taught me so much. And it's these conversations with folks like you all, and like what you're saying, Michael, of dismissing and doing these charges differently than sealing and expunging. That's something I wrote down immediately because I already know the sealing expungement isn't going to be enough, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not. And I know A'Esha was talking about the medical in her state. Here in Minnesota, we have a duopoly. There's only 2 cannabis providers that can provide medical cannabis. And they're actively not in support of legalization in our state. Like I said, we have one of the worst cannabis programs in the nation for medical cannabis, and there's no Black owners in the industry here. There's only 2. And those are huge changes that we need to see.
Yeah. And for folks, again, I always like to share information and tools and tips for folks across the country. This is why in Virginia, we fought to repeal the prohibition of possession first, instead of just putting it all together with the bill for the industry, because they're going to push a lot of things through the industry, and we're going to have to compromise on our needs. And we're doing it. Like they're already, nothing about speeding up legalization for our detriment is going to make it any better. So take the steps, repeal the enforcement of the police first, make them feel that and commit to that before they start collecting their profit, and demand those where those revenues go in the beginning, or vote no. We saw that in New York. Advocates in New York voted no to legalization for a long time because it was not right. And that's what we should do.
And Chelsea, I support that idea. That is something that I do regret in Nevada. We should have just waited. And I do want to just kind of touch on the American Rescue Plan, right? So when we talk about federal dollars, because these dollars are actually going to the states. And I just want to kind of point out that the states have the right to allocate the monies how they think is going to be in the benefit of their state and the restoration of their state from the pandemic. So I just want to point out 2 things. Number one, the federal has gone on record saying that they cannot do reparations. Obviously you can. You obviously can. You've been giving out money for the last year. You obviously can do reparations. So I just want to point that one thing out. The second thing I want to point out is watch how they allocate these dollars, because they're telling you how they feel about you. And when they show you how they feel about you, you need to position yourself to show them how you feel about them, because the states have the right to do according to, if you read the American Rescue Plan, the states can allocate the money they think is in the best interest of restoring from the pandemic. Okay. In Nevada, we have 11% Black people, we got about 13% Latin American. AAPI is our fastest growing demographic in Nevada. I can guarantee you, and this is, I'm not calling myself a psychic or anything, but I guarantee you they are looking to give us the littlest amount of money that they can. And in the places that it absolutely probably shouldn't go. Now, I'm not saying, and that's going to be across the state, right? It's going to be across the nation in each state.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so when they show you how they feel about you, one of the things that you said, Chelsea, that I want to point out is you need to know how you can engage politically. You need to be civically engaged in these processes. This is the absolute time. As you're watching where these monies go, you need to be documenting that, and you need to be showing up jurisdictionally, showing up at your county, showing up in your city, showing up at these meetings and asking them, why are they allocating that money that way? Because we don't say anything, that's why nothing happens. I know one of the things that I really want to see, you brought this up, is, they want to give money to we call it pre-childhood, pre-child school age, right? Pre-K. But the child care system is broken, like across the nation. People cannot afford childcare. So if they're not putting money to childcare, you know what they're saying? They don't give a damn about your kids, or what I like to say, F your kids, right? They don't care about your children. I always say cannabis is a reproductive issue. It's a reproductive justice issue. And I say cannabis is a reproductive justice issue because if you keep locking up sisters and moms and dads, then they're not made available to take care of their children. If they have these long-term incarcerations and they have all of this history, then they can't take care of their children the way they are supposed to. So this is a reproductive justice issue. So if you don't want to make it a drug issue, don't. Let's make it a reproductive justice issue, and let's keep these men and women out of prison so they can take care of their families, so they can have the choice to choose the environment that they want to raise their families in. That is where the American Rescue Plan money should be going. As you said, Chelsea, so should the marijuana money. It should be going to restoring these families so that we can build better. If you want to talk about us, you want to say that we don't have the opportunities, provide us the space to actually have the opportunities. Invest in people getting jobs, right? Invest in us. Oh, I'm so irritated.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But you said it, right? Watch where they're putting the money, and that's how they show their care and interest in you, right? Is how they invest in us. And right now, if we're not even at the table to say we are here to take the money, they're damn sure not just going to volunteer it for us. All right. And so we have to be there. I will say I was just on a commission meeting this morning. Virginia is talking about what to do with their dollars. They're having holding a whole special session in August. And Virginia is going to discuss what to do with this money. So please find out what's happening in your state. And even if you don't feel super expert to this conversation, just listen and you're going to learn a lot. Okay. And here at Community Change and Black Freedom Collective, we're here to have these conversations as well, because we've got a lot of questions and that sort of thing is really kind of coming up. We are getting closer to an end of a close here. I want to just offer some last words to Michael and A'Esha to put that out there for folks to follow you, as well as just any last thoughts on repeal, repair, reparations to legalize it right?
Yeah, I just want to kind of lift up what you said, Chelsea. You got to be at the table. And I have seen that in Minnesota. It seems like there's not enough of us at the table to ask for the things that we need or even demand what we should get. In Minnesota, we're about 5.7 million residents. Black are 6.4% of the total population. So it's going to require all of us to get on board in order to see any changes happen. And it seems like people are a little afraid or intimidated to actually speak out about this issue. And then when you talk about reparations, it kind of puts up a red flag to people, but we have to keep pushing the issue as much as we can.
A'Esha?
Yes, I agree with Michael. You know, let's be mindful of what's happening. Let's be civically engaged. And then I'm just going to challenge even one step further, and let's get organized. We cannot win this fight alone and isolated. We cannot silo ourselves. We need to get together. We need to come together in committees. We need to come together in cohorts. We need to band together with other organizations, and because that's where the strength is. They'll listen to you if you have numbers. If you have the votes and you have the constituents, they will listen to you. And the last thing I want to say is be mindful of your messaging. Always listen to what they're not saying, because that's what you need to be saying. Amplify what they're not saying. Do not be afraid of your own voice, because people are listening to you. And please go to makeitworknevada.org. We are always looking for people to join us in the work. So makeitworknevada.org. We would love to be your community change in Nevada.
Michael, you want to do your spiel?
Yep, you can find us at minnormal.org. That's MINN, normal, NORML.org. If you want to support us, we are looking for volunteers around Minnesota. This year, we will be focusing on Black communities specifically. So we're looking for you guys to get out and help. So if you see us and you see we're doing work, definitely get on board and help us out. We'd love any support that we can get. Thanks.
All right. And here's mine, a call from right here in Virginia, the first state in the South to legalize marijuana. Please follow us at marijuanajustice.org. You can follow us on social media at THC Justice Now on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we are really continuing to push repeal, repair, reparations, because we have a big opportunity to set precedent for things across the country if we do this in 2022. So please reach out to me or any of our folks at Black Freedom Collective if you have cannabis questions, particularly because if we can do this together, then we can push these states together to do it the right way. So I'm just really happy to be here. And thanks again to Community Change and Black Freedom Collective.
Thank you all. Thank you so much, Chelsea. I don't think I lied when I told people this was going to be a powerful hour we were putting in front of them. So, right? I did not lie. I've been proven correct. And I just want to name for folks that are still watching that you can find this recorded, the recording of this session and this conversation on both our Facebook and our YouTube channels for Community Change Action. That I invite you to engage our partners as they've dropped their information in the chat and spoken out during the session. But you can also visit us at the Community Change Action website as well to get more information about us and the BFC, the Black Freedom Collective. I want to invite the folks that are watching to come back because we do this a lot and we do it well. So come back on July 1st. The Black Freedom Collective is going to wrap up a reclamation of our freedom and our joy with a cultural moment that is both political, engaging, and beautiful. We have artists, we have dancers, we have it all, and we have our partners front and center from across the country talking about how we can get what we deserve and need to thrive. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and please look for another invitation. It's coming soon. Thank you all.